In a lot of ways, Persona has been making its way up to the upper echelon of JRPGs. It's not past the point of being niche, but it's definitely moving up in the world. So I would assume that this means that Atlus intends to expand Persona into a more general audience, at least a little bit. And what that usually entails is making a game with bigger areas and more things to do in them. Basically, scaling up the game tends to increase the size of its audience as well. Even if you look at Persona 4 to 5, you still see a large-scale increase in just the length of its story alone. So, will this continue?
That's right. Okumura is at the top of the rankings after all.
It is very natural for you to scale up your game in order to appeal to a wider audience. A few good examples of this in recent years include Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild. It's evident that many people prefer large connected worlds with a lot to do in them, as open worlds and open zones have become more and more popular. So I think it's logical to assume that Persona could continue the trend in the same direction. A bigger city and bigger areas to explore, with lots of hidden details and such, would feed players' curiosity. Imagine the level of detail within Persona 5, now on a much larger scale. It's honestly kind of enticing. It's also hard to believe that Atlus would intend to move in many other directions, seeing that SMT5, their other big budget title, did this, albeit with varying results and success. But that being said, I don't really feel like this is a direction that will be a massive benefit to Persona as a whole.
Fine. I can take on some small-time target like Okumura on my own.
Simplicity, at least outside of dungeons, has always been a big plus for me with Persona. I don't really have to wander around to look for things. Most of what I need is easy to access and pretty easy to also remember where the things are. Taking things to higher heights and making areas truly open could be a good thing, but I think it will just result in more dead space between things that I want to find. The reason why Persona can pack all this detail in is probably because each area is designed with a specific purpose. Having dead space in between isn't really bad, or isn't inherently bad, but it does cause issues when that space is just there for the sake of it. As an example, Persona 5's main areas have a lot of buildings you can't enter or see the interiors of. Could they make interiors for every building and allow each one to be seen from the inside? Yes. But what purpose does that serve? A lot of games, even the biggest ones out there, have buildings you can't enter. And the main reason is, there's no point. I think scaling up areas is fine, but there's no need to create space if it's not needed.
Man, it's huge!
Now, there's a lot that could be changed from the dungeon crawling aspect of things. Scaling up the dungeons was a big change that occurred in the jump from P4 to P5. There's a lot more that Atlus could do to make dungeons better, and I think the scale will continue to do a lot of growing here. P5 made the jump to crafting wholly unique dungeons for us, instead of the random generated floors from P4. The dungeons served as great ways to tell us a lot about the rulers without having to shove that information down our throats in some kind of exposition. Some definitely do it better than others, but palaces are not just dungeons. They're essentially a part of these characters themselves. I think if Persona is going to keep its current formula, then using dungeons as a way to expand the characters is a really effective way to tell stories and to develop these characters. It feeds back into my point about everything having a purpose. There is very rarely empty space in a palace. While there are long, winding puzzles, they aren't really contributing to empty space. I'd say stuff like the rat puzzles in Shido's palace, while they are a bit tedious, can be considered a form of deconstructing Shido as a person. Now, if we're talking size itself, I think the palaces are fine. Scaling up their size is something I can almost barely fathom. The palaces in P5 are already several hours long, and I think with knowing exactly what to do, there isn't a single palace I really spend less than 5 hours. What I'm saying is that the dungeons are only a piece of the large pie that is Persona, and I don't think the next Persona game needs to scale up its length as a whole. I'd rather see different than bigger and longer for this series.
Time to tip the scale!
Honestly, I think changes in scale are going to happen in the next Persona game. It's inevitable. Whether it's a fully connected hub world so that you don't need to travel to different points in one area anymore, or bigger, more explorable dungeons, there will probably be something to that effect in the next mainline title. But I don't think the series needs to do a lot of drastic scaling up. Instead, it should focus on the story and characters, as that has been always the focal point of Persona, at least to me. So, short and sweet, no, I don't think Persona needs to scale up, but I think it will happen in some form. And if you think that Persona should or should not scale up, why don't you tell me why in the comments below? As always, you can leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to the channel for more things Persona, Atlus, and JRPG related. And I guess just video games in general, since I'm kind of doing a little bit more of that. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.